Dumbnote. Dark. Darkness existed before existence. Let there be dark. Dark Yagami was born with a strong sense of justice. To change the world as he see fit. He saw evil permeate and seep through every crevice of society and had an obligation to stop it. Shame he wasn't born with 90% of his brain cells. During class, he got kinda hungry and starts eating his regular normal ordinary notebook. The room heard sounds of paper ripping and wet sloppy munching. Many turned to see him devouring his poor notebook. None of them reacted though, because this was usual behavior for Dark Yagami. A loud burp signaled the end of his meal. But now what is he going to write in? Then, outside the window, a notebook fell from the sky. What a coincidence. He jumps outside the window to catch it. The pane shatters and hundreds of glass shards penetrate him as he falls from the second floor of the building. He reaches to grab the notebook but he misses by about 50 meters. He lands onto the concrete head first, most likely cracking his skull open and snapping his neck, but he miraculously survives. He runs over to the notebook and on the cover were the words. He realizes he couldn't read them. Because he couldn't read. Or write. He walks home with the book in hand, still covered in glass shards and blood spilling from his exposed skull. After being lost for the next 8 hours, he finally arrives at his front door. But it wouldn't budge no matter how hard he tried. With enough brute force and another hour, he breaks the door down by slamming his entire body into it. The door and him fall to the floor. In front of him, he sees a group of people he doesn't recognize. As he looked up, he saw the shock and horror at their face at what just happened. Now he knows who they are. It's his neighbor's family. This was the wrong house. He runs outside to the house next door. He's pretty sure this is the right house this time. The door also wouldn't budge, so he knows what to do. After an hour of slamming his body into the door, he finally breaks in. He then fished for his pockets and finds the keys to his house to put next to the door, so he wouldn't ever forget to leave the house without them. He should always bring his keys when he goes outside, at least that's what his parents says, but he never knows why he needs to bring them. At home, he asks his little sister what the words on this new notebook he just found says, but she was disgusted at his bruised appearance, not having cleaned up yet after jumping out of a window, so he was forced to take a bath first. So he pisses in the shower, then used the toilet water to bathe himself. He turned on the sink and brushed his teeth, the rubber handle in his mouth and the brush part in his hand. He forgets to turn off the sink though and flooded the entire house. The Yagami family stayed at a hotel for the night as the house was being fixed. Luckily, Dark brought his soggy wet notebook with him and asked her sister again what the words on the cover was. She finally read it to him. Death Note. They opened the inside of the book. It was completely blank. But there were some more words behind the cover. Whoever's name is written in this notebook shall die. Dark knew he needed to test this immediately. Sadly, again, he didn't know how to read or write, so he had to ask his sister to write someone's name. The first name who came up in his head was her, because well, she was right there, so he wanted her to write her own name. She wasn't the superstitious type, thinking this book was a prank of some kind. She does it. She writes her own name. Nothing happened. Well, that's good. But after 40 seconds, she flinches, then grabs her chest. The life escapes from her eyes and she falls onto the floor. Their parents ask what happened, what did he do? He couldn't answer them. He doesn't know how to describe how she died or if they'd believe it. He picks up the notebook again, but suddenly, a tall black bipedal monstrous creature appeared in front of him. The monster introduces himself as Ryak, a god of death who dropped the notebook into the human world. But Dark wasn't listening to anything he was saying, still shocked at Ryak's appearance. He screams to get away from him, his parents utterly confused at what is going on. He starts throwing objects at Ryak and using whatever around him to get him to leave, but of course, Ryak is not tangible, so it just goes through him. However, in his attacks against Ryak, his parents weren't safe, and after being thrown a table at them, they went to the same place as his little sister. Dark was alone in that hotel room. Ryak only said one thing: "Humans sure are interesting." The police barged into the hotel room that night. It was a mess. There were 3 corpses and one insane man throwing furniture around. He was admitted to a mental hospital and all his belongings moved to, like a particular notebook. Here, he was meant to think about his actions and spend his life outside of society to not endanger the general public. Though with a magical notebook that let the user kill anyone with just their name and face, it was inevitable he would cause havoc anyways. Especially with his strong sense of justice. Luckily, the room he had was less of a jail and more of a comfy hospital room meant for rehabilitation. So there was a TV. Every so often, on the news, would be cases of murder, rape, arson, terrorism, corruption, and everything nice. There'd usually be a name and or at least a face attached to them shown on screen. The fact these crimes happened on a daily basis around the world infuriated him to no end. So he would use his notebook. Oh, hold on, he can't read or write. Well, that's a conundrum. Ryak appears in the room to help him solve this. Dark has not calmed down since the last he has seen him and goes into another uncontrollable tantrum. The god of death sighs. He's here to tell him about the Shinigami ideal, where the notebook user could replace their eyes with Shinigami eyes, which would let them see the person's name above their face, but the caveat was they would have their remaining lifespan. Dark wasn't really listening to him while making a mess of the room, but he did hear the word deal. He was just like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it, just get out of here. After having his lifespan, he needed his eyes replaced, but he didn't know the surgery would be instant and painless. Instead, to get Ryak out of the room faster, he decides to gouge his eyes out with a spoon immediately. The spoon enters the bottom of his right eye, the metal hinges between the bone of the eye socket and the soft eyeball. With enough force, it plops out of his head. He screams in pain as a nurse walked by and stops him from removing his left eye, but the damage was already done. The nurse tends to his right eye and brings an eye patch to cover it. Though with his remaining eye, when the nurse approaches him, he notices reddish-looking numbers and symbols floating above the nurse's face. He still couldn't read them. He jumps out his window with the notebook, trying to find someone who can read or write. Anyone would do. But might as well choose the prettiest one he could find. Misa Amina. She happened to be walking near, going home after a photo shoot. Seeing a person run straight at her wounded with glass shards inside him and an eye patch, she was frightened at first, but something about him was alluring. He desperately begs her to write some names onto this notebook. She thought, does he want an autograph? Her bodyguard would not have any of it and did not let Misa touch him. He looks dangerous anyways. Dark tries to chase her as she left but could not get past the bodyguard and went back. The next few days he kept track of her from the hospital room and found where she works at, then started following her there. In the corner of Misa's eyes during work she would see the mysterious man yesterday, and yeah, this was getting creepy. It's just another stalker. Security guards asked what he was doing here, which would report back to Misa, and she finally learns he's from the mental hospital and keeps repeating he just wants to learn how to write. While he could literally go anywhere else to figure out how to do that, Misa felt some sense of sympathy and wanted to meet him at least once. She was always interested in the edgy and the macabre. This guy looked like that incarnate. Also, hopefully after this, he would just stop stalking her. Surprise, the model visited his hospital room one day. The instant she entered was a grown man with a pen in his hand in front of the TV, frustrated he cannot write anything. She flipped through the notebook in front of him and it was filled with pages and pages of squiggly lines and gibberish. He must have been practicing for a long time. Misa, feeling pity, sits next to him and slowly teaches him how to handle a pen, how to recognize letters, then repeat the letters into words on the notebook. He still wasn't able to understand what the letters mean, but he figured out how to read names then write them down, albeit quite messily. Misa learned his past talking to him and sees him as a broken man with a passion to learn how to read and write. But she had her own job to do and couldn't spend her life on him. As a goodbye gift, she gives Dark her signature on the notebook they have been using. Right as Misa was leaving the room, a sharp pain attacked her chest and she falls onto the floor. Dark, not being able to connect the dots, screams in horror at sight of her collapse. While he was suspected for Misa Amina's death, considering his reaction and mental state, he was free from suspicion. Dark thought Misa's death, the death of an innocent caring woman who taught him to read and write, was a cruel act of injustice and used his anger and grief to only fuel him further to erase every evil on earth. Now, with the power to actually use the notebook, the world experienced hundreds of criminals die from mysterious heart attacks. Noon knew it was a coincidence or if there was some sort of omnipotent murderer. But one person was sure there had to be someone responsible for all of this. That person came up with a plan to catch the elusive Kira, the nickname given to this mysterious serial killer. Another day, while killing criminals on TV for Dark, a sudden announcement appeared. There was a desk, a white background, and a person in the middle of the screen exclaiming they will be the one to catch Kira. What ticked Dark off was that he said his sense of justice is twisted and what he is doing is wrong. Naturally, he wrote his name down without a second thought. The person on TV died from a heart attack nearly a minute later. But out of nowhere a letter appeared on screen. The letter B stylized like B button blood type. This was the real detective. A voice was heard on screen. He couldn't believe what just happened. From Kira's killing in this announcement he was able to glean important information. Stuff no one else figured out yet. He announces from the result of his deductions. The guy who died must have had cholesterol issues, and that's how he got the heart attack. Welp, that's that. From America's side, the FBI, thinking B button blood type is completely incompetent, decide to send agents into Japan to stalk possible suspects, one of them being Dark. Gay Penber was the officer responsible for tracking Dark. Dark doesn't notice Gay at first but does notice him eventually. They get into a bus together just by incident as Dark realizes he did not bring enough change to pay for the bus. So he hijacks the bus for $2. He doesn't have a gun, so he pulls out the death note, being his only weapon at the moment. He proves it's real by killing one of the passengers. Gay Penber knew he needed to take immediate action, but the time it takes to write his name down is shorter than approaching him, so he needs to be careful. Dark walks up to the FBI agent. Well, that was easy. He tackles him down and disarms his notebook. But looking into his eyes, he noticed his beauty. Yes, well, Gay has always had an affinity for men. He jumps back off, forgetting what he was here to do. Dark asks for the names of every FBI agent in Japan meant to catch Kira, and Gay obediently writes their names neatly onto the death note. His love in first sight was that strong. Then he dies after writing his own name. He punches someone in the face and loots his wallet to pay his bus fee. Note from author: I am actually stupid to not have thought of this. I wanted to put Naomi Misara into this as Gay Penber's girlfriend, but then I realized, he's gay. So fuck it. He's a closet and repressed himself. Naomi Misara, Gay Penber's girlfriend, thought something was fishy going on in that bus hijacking. Multiple died from heart attacks, and immediately afterwards all the FBI agents investigating died. Someone on that bus must have been Kira. Naomi was able to glean information on who was on that bus after the police investigated the incident. Seeing the security cameras, one person left early. They analyzed the footage and was able to track down Dark. A mental hospital patient, huh? She heads and finds his room. She's about to face Kira, so she walks in warily. She's going nice cop this time and asks if he was in the recent bus hijacking incident. He straight up says he was the one who hijacked the bus. Not just that, admits he is Kira. Wow. Naomi is shocked at the news. She has enough grounds to arrest him, but she was not a police officer, so he lets him stay in the mental hospital for now. She reveals the information to the police and Noon is convinced he's just a crazy dude, probably can't even read or write. I mean, they're right on that at least. Right then and there, Naomi gets a heart attack, an obvious move by Kira. But everyone responds by "Welp should've eased up on the cholesterol." Our B-button blood type boy here needs a lead on Kira, but it has been a dead end for months. At this point thousands of criminals have died by his hands. They don't even have a list of suspects. B-button blood type has completely given up. However, he has a genius way out to force a suspect. By guessing. He asks for a list of everyone in Japan. Japan has a population of 125 million, so if each name was printed onto 1 centimeter of paper, it would be twice as long as the Grand Canyon. After wasting tons of paper and cutting down millions of trees, he got his list. He walks up and down the giant length of paper and chooses one name out of 125 million. It just happens to land on Dark Yagami. The police force break into Dark Yagami's room. He freaks the fuck out and throws away the notebook outside. Who knows where that'll end up. He's imprisoned for the next few months. If the killings stop, it proves he is Kira. Dark, through his twisted logic, realizes he cannot be Kira if he thinks he is not Kira, but he cannot just lose his memories by will. Actually, he can by releasing possession of the notebook. Ryuk knows his intentions and appears in front of him, but when he arrives he sees a bloody sight. Dark is banging his head against the wall over and over again. It worked. He forgot about the notebook, is freaking out again. Why is he in this confined room? At around this time, a number of mysterious heart attacks affecting criminals are happening again. He is not Kira. B-button blood type takes enjoyment from Dark going insane, but the police interfere and let him out. They still want to keep an eye on him though and let him help investigate who the real Kira is, because they need Dark's genius. Dark is invited into working with B-button blood type on investigating the new Kira, but of course they do nothing productive and watch Peppa Pig all day every day. Matsuda comes in with a lead. Isn't it mysterious how the Yotsuba group stock's rising and Kira is killing people who benefit them? Dark and B-button blood type love it since they hold Yotsuba stock even though they don't even know what stocks are. They just like seeing line go up and let Kira kill whoever they want, but Matsuda actually has reason, so he goes to investigate by himself. Intruding into a Yotsuba group meeting, he overhears and figures out who Kira is. He confesses on TV who Kira is, which of course scares Kira, and Matsuda sadly dies before revealing his name since Dark and B-button blood type were busy playing patty cake or whatever. Though after hearing Matsuda's death, B-button blood type was at least smart enough to deduce that since Matsuda broke into the Yotsuba headquarters then died after threatening to reveal who Kira is, Kira must be a member of the Yotsuba group. Although B-button blood type couldn't be bothered in figuring out who it actually was, so instead he just nukes the entire headquarters building with an atom bomb. It did devastating damage, not only destroying the Yotsuba building but much of the surrounding buildings. Because of the radiation as well, the surrounding area is left uninhabitable for the next few thousand years. But that doesn't scare Dark. He scours through the rubble one day and finds the notebook miraculously intact. He wonders where he's seen it before. He still has the Shinigami eyes, so he finds the first person he sees and yep, they died. This is the Death Note. He can act on his justice once again. In B-button blood type's perspective, the killings have started again. In the monitor room with Dark right beside him, they list the people who Kira have killed. Dark is of course writing these names. B-button blood type asks what he's writing and looks at his notebook. The list of people who Kira have killed and the names in the notebook are a 100% match. Not just that, there are names here that haven't shown up in the list yet, but after checking again these people died. B-button blood type deduces, it's probably just a coincidence. The police force have made another list. It has the best detectives' names on it, they are willing to work with B-button blood type on the Kira case. He needs to take notes of these names and decides to borrow Dark's notebook for it, being the only paper around. Writing name after name, each detective one by one dies from a heart attack. B-button blood type has just killed everyone who could have helped him. The police force are shocked too. This Kira is unstoppable. Dark has won. He has killed everyone that could oppose him. Eventually, every criminal in prison, their name has been written down. He moves on to latent criminals, the rapists and murderers still roaming in the world, but of course there's no convenient way to know who's evil, so he makes some mistakes every so often. But in the end it didn't matter, they all died and his definition of crime has loosened. Petty crimes such as driving past the speed limit, jaywalking, cyberbullying, sneezing, all of it evil in his eyes. After they died, he only had good people to kill. 7 billion people gone. Then it was just Dark and B-button blood type. Turns out his name was literally just the letter B. Then he writes his own name. The end.